Our panel today is John, Steve, Cheryl, and Lindsay. John, I want to ask you, Steve, I want to ask you a question. How did the medical community take to you taking your daughter off of the drugs that were prescribed by doctors and physicians?
Well, the doctors knew immediately through the testing that they were doing that we had taken Lindsay off from the drugs. Her T cells flipped, her ratio of T cells changed, and they were the doctor at the University of Minnesota was very upset with us at the time, and she explained to us how how the HIV is causing all of these problems when really we believed that it was the AZT. But we continued to take her off from the drugs, and then we took her to a holistic doctor, and the holistic doctor had asked us or had asked the hospital for Lindsay's records, and when she did that, it tripped a trigger at the university, and the university on New Year's Eve day called our holistic doctor and told her that there were homes out there to take Lindsay. In other words, they were going to make moves to take Lindsay out of our care because we weren't going to keep her on the drugs. So at that time we had to kind of look at a lawyer and kind of figure out how we were going to deal with this, and then that was at the time, then kind of the oddity of us taking her off the drug at the time piqued the interest of the media, and that's when Day One got involved, and then when they came to interview the doctor, then the doctors backed off. They didn't want any more to do with it. So, but we've over the years have been called all types of names for having taken her off from the drugs. The doctors have chased us for about 17 years.
They call us baby killers.
Really?
Baby killers, Nazis, yeah, homophobes. So right now what they're claiming is that Lindsay was a false positive, because when we were at the university, we found after we took Lindsay off, we went down and actually examined her files and found that one of the tests that they had told us was positive was actually negative. So that was something that was brought out in the movie and has now kind of circulated around the internet that Lindsay was never positive to begin with. So we've toured with the House of Numbers, and a couple of times when we're on the Q&A at the end of the show, they say, well, Lindsay was never positive to begin with, which really upsets me because Lindsay was tested numerous times. It was just this one test that was brought to the forefront because Lindsay tested negative when she was positive, but actually she's had negative and positive tests.
Were the doctors ever able to give you a definitive answer on whether or not the tests are 100% accurate or not?
Well, you can take the test, you could take the exact same test to Australia, the exact same one that she had done here, take it to Australia, and she wouldn't test positive there. She would not be considered positive there. So the testing changes from country to country.
So it's subjective of how they read the results
yes,
from
and
the test.
It can also be subjective to what your lifestyle is, because there's also a questionnaire that they fill out as, did you use drugs? Are you homosexual?
Or
they go down the whole
were you
list.
born in Romania, for example?
Yes.
That would be a real big trigger there.
So,
and are you African American? Which that's one of the
Yes.
test factors too.
So then that's applied to the chemical part of the test. So you and I may have the same bands that light up or that separate out when they actually do the blood work. But even in this country, one of us, because of our lifestyle, might be considered positive while the other one's considered negative. And then the definition of AIDS is different in every country, from Canada to Africa to almost every place in the world has a different definition of AIDS. So my question was that I posed to some biologists that were quite hostile with us. I said, okay, now you've made your point here that you think she's negative, but do you know if she's negative or positive? And
Can
they
you
couldn't.
tell me?
Right?
Can
Can
you
you
tell
tell
me
me right now?
definitively?
19 years later, can you tell me now? And they couldn't. They wouldn't answer the question. They said, well, just have her retested. I said, well, you know, this was 17 years ago. Should she have been on the drug this whole time? Would she still be alive? Do you think she'd still be alive if we'd kept her on the drug? No answer to that question either.
So it really is, it almost sounds like it's as many years as the general population has known about HIV and AIDS, it sounds to me that there is a chance that the research isn't done yet, or the numbers are not
Right.
100% solid.
They're not adding up.
They're not adding up.
And it's also a fact that the numbers in Africa are skewed. There's a definition in Africa that if you have any one of the 5 or 10 different AIDS-defining conditions like diarrhea, weight loss, persistent cough, if you have 2 or 3 of any of those, you're automatically classified as AIDS without an HIV test. It's called the Bengali definition. So all these people in Africa that they're saying, excuse me, that they're saying are dying of AIDS, that they've never tested positive on an HIV test. They're just classified as AIDS, even though they could have died of malnutrition, dehydration, malaria, tuberculosis.
So let's clarify to the general public, there is a difference between HIV and AIDS. Is it the same thing, or is HIV the virus and AIDS is something, or is it the same?
Well, AIDS is a whole lot of things. It's a whole group of things, and it can be different from one country to another country. AIDS in Africa is completely different than AIDS in America.
Okay.
And how they come to the conclusion of AIDS, whether you have AIDS or not, is different in Africa. It's different every place you go in the world.
Well, I'd really like to thank everybody for joining the panel today. And you can get some more information about Rethinking AIDS at ra2009.org. And will that give you the information at that website?
Yes, or wearelivingproof.org has a lot of information and links on it as well, and a lot of living proof examples, even though it's just started, so we've only got people that are just now starting to get on it, but it's been, they're from all over the world.
Okay. Once again, I want to thank everyone, and this is a special edition of Perspectives. And I'm your host, Chris Gregory. Thank you.